Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Mad Meta Magic, where we try to make the magic meta mad. Now, today, I found a Reanimator deck that is kind of janky, and I'm interested in playing. This was a single list that finished as a 5-0 on, or that was reported through Goldfish, I guess. But the main deck is very much all in on Reanimator. We've got like Bone Shards and Collective Brutality and Liliana as discard outlets. We have 8 giant creatures with which we can reanimate. Grave Titan, Serra's Emissary, Ashen Rider, Terastodon, and then a playset of Archon of Cruelty. Once they're in the grave, we can get them out with our Singleton Unburial Rites, or our Persists, or our Priest of Fell Rites, all of which are 2 mana reanimate spells, with the exception of Unburial Rites. Alternatively, we can go put one of our large creatures in the grave with Unmarked Grave, because none of them are legendary. Or, if it's late game and we have like 5-6 mana, we can Unmarked Grave for Unburial Rites, and then very shortly after, Unburial Rites for our threat. We have Inquisition and Thoughtseize to protect this. Bone Shards is sort of an additional protection spell that also can discard. Profane Tutor to go find whatever we don't have. Play big fatties fast and win. That's the plan. Sideboard is a little bit of a different story. If we're expecting a lot of grave hate, we're basically going to swap out the majority of our game plan for like Stoneforge Mystics, like Batterskull, Kaldra, well, probably not Sphinx of the Steel Wind, but Vindicates, Kaya's Guile, Plague Engineer, and play like a Stoneblade style deck. We have like 12. And we don't even have to give up like the cheap reanimation spells, because reanimating a Stoneforge Mystic going and getting another equipment is not bad. We can keep some of the gigantic creatures that we can actually cast, like an Ashen Rider. We can drop things like Terastodon. We can keep Grave Titan in, because we potentially could actually cast Grave Titan at some point. Other than that, we have a single Stony Silence, a single Soul Guide Lantern, and we have a Sphinx of the Steel Wind versus Burn. It's been a while since I've recorded Constructed. I've not been interested, but I'm going to make a concerted effort to play a few different decks and see if I can't reignite some interest in Constructed Modern. So I'll see you guys in round 1. I should leave a disclaimer here. I have not ever really played Legacy Reanimator. I've played it in Cube with the powerful reanimation spells, but that's really easy. Just Entomb, Exhume, win the game. This is going to be a little more difficult, and especially in the modern format. I have no experience with this archetype whatsoever. The only thing that was even close was I had like Gifts Ungiven for the double Entomb, untap Unburial Rites Iona, and that's not what we're doing in this deck. It's not even close. So the play pattern is going to be very different. I've not had a ton of time to practice, and if I suck the first time around, I'm probably going to suck the first time around, but that's going to give us opportunities to learn, and I hope it gives you opportunities to learn vicariously. Alright, I'll see you guys in round 1 for real this time. Alright, round 1, and we are on the draw. Unfortunately, I don't think we can get carried by 2 hand hate spells. I think we need a mulligan. Okay, this looks quite a bit better. I'm going to put back, I think, Prismatic Vista. So we can fetch up a Godless Shrine, lead on a Thoughtseize. We can Collective Brutality and put Archon in the grave. Opponent mulligan to 5, so that's good news for us. And they're playing Tron. They put Chalice on 0. Alright, we draw Serra's Emissary. So, crack Marsh Flats, get a Godless Shrine, give them the old Thoughtseize. Let's see what variant of Tron they are. They are Eldrazi Tron. So, take Chalice from them, pass the turn. Opponent plays Wastes, plays a map. We untap, we draw Priest of Fell Rites. So we know we can't duress Matter Reshaper, although I'm not sure that matters that much. They're going to probably have to spend their entire turn playing Matter Reshaper, so what we do is we play out Priest of Fell Rites. They can crack the map for a land this turn, but if they don't kill Priest, we can just Collective Brutality, ditch Archon. Oh, perfect, I can actually just kill Matter Reshaper. We're not going to need these Thoughtseizes, so let's, I don't know, just ditch all of our stuff. Ditching Serra's Emissary and Archon of Cruelty. And I think Archon of Cruelty is a stronger card for us to reanimate this turn, because it makes them discard their last card in hand. Awesome. It's as simple as that, folks. Okay, let me look up what Eldrazi plays for Grave Hate. Let's see. So out of the sideboard, they've got Tormod's Crypt, Grafdigger's Cage, they can Pithing Needle, our Priest, they play Relic. They got a lot of stuff. And of course, I think they play Scavenger Grounds in the main deck. I don't know if that's still a thing, but it was at one point. So in that case, what I want to do is I want to bring in the hard removal, the Stoneforge Mystics. Let me see here. I want to take out anything that's going to be useless without reanimating it, and I want to take out. I guess I'm bringing in Stony Silence too. I could even bring in Plague Engineer. It just doesn't kill a whole lot for their deck. So we're not going to be very hard on the Reanimator plan. We're going to kind of do the transformational sideboard thing, which I think historically I've disliked. I think I've been pretty vocal about that. But I think in a deck like this, it can work if it changes the game plan enough that your opponent's not going to expect it. So I think I'm going to take out these creatures, because the rest of these I have some hope of casting. I'm going to get rid of probably like Unmarked Grave, maybe a couple of Persists. I'm going to keep Unburial Rites. I don't know if I need Kaya's Guile. I'm going to get rid of Unmarked Grave in its entirety. Priest is a reanimation spell that's like somewhat reasonable anyway, so maybe I don't even need the Persists. Or maybe Persist is better than Unburial Rites. Then I need to cut one more card. Yeah. Let's cut these 13 cards for these 13 cards and try it like that. Big sideboard. Alright, well, we have a Kaldra, we have a Collective Brutality, and we can lead on an Inquisition. We are on the draw, but I think we can keep this. The more our opponent mulligans, the more we can attempt to punish them for it. They did mulligan to 6. They play a Power Plant. They don't have a map. We draw a Swamp. I'm going to lead on a Swamp. Let's go ahead and Inquisition. They have Warping Wail and Dismember, but they have Natural Tron. So if we could draw Vindicate, that would be great. They play a tower. We untap. Draw a Swamp. So, play a Swamp. Duress, Drain. And let's ditch Archon. So they have Ugin the Ineffable now, which means that's what they're playing next turn. Unfortunately, we do not have a way to make them sack Ugin. I'd like to draw Bone Shards for that, at minimum. Okay, they've got Karn, Great Creator. They're probably going to go get Ensnaring Bridge. They could get Liquid Metal Coating, that wouldn't be unreasonable. They play Grafdigger's Cage. Alright, well the sideboard plan so far is working. We get a Priest of Fell Rites, which is a little bit unfortunate that we didn't have it sooner, but maybe I kept a bad hand. It's possible I shouldn't be this far down on the Reanimator plan, like maybe I should keep some Persists, because we're gonna ditch some fat creatures to the grave occasionally. Okay, opponent plays Ugin the Ineffable. And Thought Not Seer, so they can take Kaldra, or they can take Kaya's Guile. They probably take Kaya's Guile. Yeah, we're pretty far off of Kaldra. So my opponent kills the Priest, upticks Karn, no cards in hand. We untap, draw Concealed Courtyard. So play Concealed Courtyard tapped. We would have to draw like Vindicate and then Unearth Priest to get back Archon of Cruelty. And it has, we'll call it limited value right now. Even if we could, because they have multiple threats that they could have, they could sack. That Liquid Metal Coating, I think, is probably a death knell for us. We're going to shut off Concealed Courtyard. Okay. Liliana, yeah, they have too many creatures. Okay. Let's try and keep a better hand for Game 3. Opponent, from what they saw, they're going to think that, oh, yeah, he's got some Stoneforge Mystics, but, he's still doing the Reanimator thing, and we're really not. So, alright, run it back. And maybe I shouldn't be taking out things like Terastodon and Sarah's Emissary, but the reason I brought in Sphinx of the Steel Wind was because it's actually, slightly more castable. I guess it's not, actually. I should not have Sphinx of the Steel Wind in this deck, because the only way I can play it is if I reanimate it. That's incorrect. Okay, we have Stony Silence, we have Persist. I don't know how good that's actually going to be. It's good if my opponent keeps a hand with Expedition Map, but we don't have a discard outlet. I'm going to try keeping this. Like I said, it's a little bit experimental me playing this deck, because I'm not used to playing Reanimator at all. I have no idea what the lines for this deck look like. I'm kind of just figuring this out as I go. I didn't find this on another content creator's channel or anything like that. This was just a list that I found that looked interesting. So we're going to lead on Godless Shrine tapped, pass the turn. Kind of hoping they start with a map. There we go. We draw Silent Clearing, play Stony Silence, pass the turn. They have a Wastes. We untap. We draw Brutality, Duress and Drain, ditching Sphinx. They do have a Thought-Knot Seer, and they have 2 relics, but no lands. If they miss a land drop, we can persist that Sphinx and start beating down with a gigantic artifact creature. But if they draw any land, the game's over. Alright, so I don't think we won that by being good. I think we won that by being lucky. I'm definitely not going to bring in Sphinx, because I thought for some reason this deck had a Hollowed Fountain in it, and it does not. So, this deck is only Orzhov, it is not Esper. So don't do that, that was definitely a mistake. Thankfully it paid out for us, but don't do that, that should have been an Archon of Cruelty, or a Sarah's Emissary naming Planeswalker or something. Anyway, I'll see you guys in round 2. Alright, we're on the play. We have Unmarked Grave, we have Inquisition, we have no reanimation spells, and no way to empty these threats out of our hands. So this is kind of a 5-card hand to begin with, so let's mulligan to 6. Okay, this is much better. I will keep this. I'm gonna put back Archon of Cruelty. So start Marsh Flats, fetch, get a Swamp, Thoughtseize our opponent. A Repeal Condescend Krasis deck. Take Condescend, pass the turn. Opponent leads on Botanical Sanctum. We draw Priest of Fell Rites. Even though this is the most likely spell they can interact with, we're gonna play it. They play Tide Channel Pathway, then pass. We draw an Unmarked Grave, play it. I kind of want to go Ashen Rider, because I can just exile a land. Terastodon could blow up all of their lands. Actually, would Terastodon be better? Up to 3. So I could just blow up 2 of their lands. Let's do it. Because I was going to say, with the way that we did this, they don't get to like, kill Priest of Fell Rites in response. Nice! Alright. So that was cool. Now, do we stick with the Reanimator plan, or do we go to dumping the Reanimator plan? I've never seen my opponent's deck before. I don't know if it's actually seeing play in a modern deck. I think this is some kind of just, like, janky Simic deck. But they are playing counter spells, which Stoneforge is good against. So I could do, like, these 8 cards, and if I was going to... I'm not citing out, like, all of my threats or anything. I would probably dump a couple of Archon of Cruelty. Actually, you know what? Let's stay on the Reanimator plan, but bring in Vindicates to answer some kind of problematic permanent for us. There's also... I may want to bring in Stony Silence, because my opponent's playing a ton of artifacts. Like with Walking Ballista and stuff, but we don't know that for sure. I think versus my opponent, I'd probably take out 1 Archon, go down like a Profane Tutor, and maybe a Sarah's Emissary? Well, no, that doesn't seem right. I need to cut one thing that's not a threat, because we need a certain threat density. Grave Titan might be the worst in this matchup. So I'm going to take out a Grave Titan. We'll try it like this. Well, we have a way to ditch Archon, but we have no way to reanimate it. I think I would rather mulligan to a hand that has, like, Hand Hate. 2 reanimation spells and a Vindicate. I'm going to keep this. Even though it goes directly in contrast to what I just said. Opponent leads on Botanical Sanctum. We draw Thoughtseize, which is excellent. Thoughtseize our opponent. Repeal Nimble Obstructionist, Hydroid Krasis. Take Obstructionist from them. That's definitely the most annoying card they have. That can counter Priest's activation. They play a Power Plant. So this is some kind of Simic Tron deck? It's definitely not something I've seen before, I can tell you that much. Play Priest of Fell Rites. Now my opponent can cast a Repeal this turn. They play an Urza's Mine. We untap and draw Archon of Cruelty. So shock Godless Shrine. Play Liliana. I think they have to repeal the Priest in response. Yep. Okay. Uptick Lily, ditch Archon. Opponent discards Gemstone Caverns, which is not a card we knew they had. So they need Grave Hate this turn. They play an island, probably a Krasis. Krasis X2, but unless they have Surgical Extraction, they're going to be in trouble. We draw another Priest of Fell Rites, so let's persist. We're doing this before we activate Liliana or do any of that, because we need to know if we have to Edict this Krasis. Okay. This opponent has to sack a creature, discard a card, and they scoop the match. Alright. Archon of Cruelty is an excellent reanimation target. So, alright, I'll see you guys in round 3. Been seeing this message a lot more lately. Not sure why. Alright. I am going to keep this. 1 mana gets us to where we need to go. And we get to lead on hand hate, so. And potentially, if my opponent is an aggressive deck, we can Bone Shards their first threat and then just reanimate Sarah's Emissary, naming whatever is going to be the best for us. Even if we don't draw a second land, then we just need to draw a second land. So we got 2 turns, potentially, to draw a second source of mana. So, Godless Shrine, Inquisition. It would appear that my opponent is also some kind of Reanimator deck. Unmarked Grave is a tutor. Thirst for Knowledge gets 2 cards into the grave, and Prismatic Ending can potentially answer Priest of Fell Rites were we to play it, which we don't have to. Let's get rid of Prismatic Ending. Let's get rid of Unmarked Grave. If we draw a land, we're gonna Collective Brutality and Duress. This opponent leads on Polluted Delta. We untap. We draw another Inquisition. Okay, that works too. Take Thirst for Knowledge from them. Pass the turn. Opponent cracks Polluted Delta for Hallowed Fountain. So they might be playing Gifts Reanimator. Opponent plays a Watery Grave tapped. We untap. Land. Not a land. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent plays a Flooded Strand, which is a card we didn't know they had. There's our land. Play Marsh Flats. Crack it. Yeah, let's go with another Godless. Duress Drain. Ditch Sarah's Emissary. They have Gifts Ungiven and Prismatic Ending, so take Gifts from them. Pass the turn. And if I reanimate Sarah's Emissary, I'm tempted to say instant so they can't cast Gifts. They play an island. They play Teferi. Okay. They down-tick him to draw. We untap and draw plains. So, play a plains. Bone Shards to kill him, discarding Priest. Persist Sarah's Emissary. They're not going to kill Sarah's Emissary with a sorcery that's Prismatic Ending. I think we name instant, so that way we can't be targeted by Gifts Ungiven and they can't path us. Pass the turn. They play a Flooded Strand, which we didn't know they had. We draw an Archon of Cruelty. Go to combat. Attack for 6. Take them to 10. I can Unmarked Grave for Unburial Rites or an Archon of Cruelty. I think it's going to be an Archon of Cruelty. Pass the turn. When a cracks Flooded Strand, goes to 9. Gets a Hallowed Fountain tapped. They untap. They play an island. I mean, if they have Teferi unsummon here, it would be bad. They play Chalice on 2. We draw a turn Astodon. Go ahead. Attack for 6. Take him to 3. And my opponent has to have a Wrath or a Teferi to not die. And they don't. Okay. So we know our opponent's playing Reanimator, which means Soul Guide Lantern is coming in 100%. Let's see. Grave Titan seems like it's kind of bad in this matchup. I wonder if I should be going on the Stoneforge plan. I definitely want Kaya's Guile to exile my opponent's grave. And I may want Vindicate to answer the permanents that they could play. Archon of Cruelty is nice because it edicts my opponent. My opponent is playing Chalice. I think I need a Vindicator too. I'm gonna cut like 1 Archon, a Profane Tutor, then like, I guess maybe another Archon and an Unmarked Grave. Actually, put that Unmarked Grave back. I'm gonna cut... I don't want to cut Bone Shards, but it might be better than Vindicate, actually. We'll just run 1 Vindicate and try it like this. Well, we have Hand Hate, we have a Reanimation spell, we have nothing to pitch to it, but that's kind of a given considering I sided a lot of them out, which I'm probably sideboarding incorrectly. Like I said, I didn't build this deck. Draw Persist. Go Inquiring. They have Unmarked Grave, Persist, Drown in the Lock, Teferi. I'm going to take Drown in the Lock. So my opponent is probably going to cast Unmarked Grave here. And then we are going to have to Brutality them to take... Maybe I needed to take Unmarked Grave and let them have Brutality. Or let them have Drown in the Lock. So they're also Reanimating Archon. We untap. We draw Bone Shards. So play Marsh Flats. Crack Marsh Flats. Get a Swamp. Duress them. Take Persist. Pass the turn. Now my opponent can play Teferi. And we can Bone Shards Teferi. But we need to get to Kaya's Guile to exile their grave. Opponent plays a Flooded Strand. gets an island. They play Teferi. They down tick him. We untap. We draw another Kaya's Guile. Well, unfortunately, I think we gotta do this. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a land, then passes. We draw a Profane Tutor. Put that on suspend. Pass the turn. So my opponent's probably playing a big Teferi next turn unless they have gifts now. Okay. So they are playing big Teferi, which means we need to draw a land and have a Vindicate, and they can't have a counter for that. So we untap, Profane Tutor ticking down. We draw Brutality. Yeah, this is going south pretty quick. Well, they had Drown in the Lock anyway. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Profane Tutor might have to go grab a land. In fact, I think it certainly does. Alright, and that's gonna be game, I think. Ditch a Kai. Actually, no, it's not game yet. It's close, but they play a Flooded Strand. They crack it. They get a land tapped. They uptick Teferi to 6. They untap some lands. Profane Tutor coming off suspend. I have to say, getting a land with this feels so bad. I guess get a Plains. Then we draw Silent Clearing. Play a Plains, and we'll say each opponent sacks a creature and exile their grave. So no Unburial Rites flashback for them. Next turn we Vindicate Teferi, but like my opponent's drawn so many cards. They uptick him to 7. They play a land. 4 mana, they have Gifts Ungiven. They're just putting Archon of Cruelty in the grave. Because they have a Persist. Yep. So we gotta ditch Silent Clearing. Opponent gets to untap 2 lands. So we actually have to Vindicate Teferi and draw a threat this turn. That is not a threat. Blow up Teferi. I have a counterspell. Alright. I don't think the Stoneforge plan is any better. I think we just have to be on the play with a very fast hand. I'm going to bring an Archon back in over a Vindicate. And I'm actually going to drop a... I want to bring in the other Archon is what I'm trying to do here. But I think we've got to play it like this. Alright, we'll play first. We have Thoughtseize, Unmarked Grave, but no reanimation spell. We have plenty of mana. We can cycle Silent Clearing. It kind of just depends on how fast my opponent's hand is. I think I'm going to keep... We have 8 reanimation spells, 9 if you count Unburial Rites. So, Swamp Thoughtseize. They have Counterspell and Persist. Take Counterspell. Alright, we got to draw something before they do. And they mulligan to 5. They play Watery Grave tapped. We untap and draw another Unmarked Grave. So, Shock Godless Shrine, Unmarked Grave. Let's go for probably Archon. Ashen Rider might be better. If I was more intelligent, I could say Sarah's Emissary and name a better card type. Terastodon, we might be able to blow up all their lands. Let's go with Ashen Rider. Pass the turn. When it plays Glacial Fortress, we untap and draw Collective Brutality. So Unmarked Grave again. Let's go put Unburial Rites into the grave. Play Godless Shrine tapped. Really wish we'd drawn a 1-mana hand hate spell there, just to really make sure the coast is clear. Opponent plays Flooded Strand, which we knew about. I am going to take a turn off and Duress. I was going to say the odds they have a counterspell is pretty high. Play Silent Clearing, pass the turn. This opponent has Persist 2 unknowns in hand. They crack Flooded Strand. Untap, they draw a card. They play Polluted Delta. Yeah, maybe I needed to get Terastodon actually rather than Ashen Rider. Blowing up 1 land might not be enough. Opponent is casting Unmarked Grave, and they're holding Persist. They put Archon of Cruelty into the grave. They persist him, forcing us to discard. So we discard Concealed Courtyard. Cycle Silent Clearing. We get Persist. Untap. Draw Kaya's Guile. Play Marsh Flats, crack Marsh Flats. Get a Plains. and hope they don't have force. On burial rites, Ashen Rider. Ashen Rider gonna exile Archon. So otherwise we just lose to it immediately. Pass the turn. We have no idea what's in our opponent's hand. They play Polluted Delta. If they have Teferi, that's actually super bad. Either one, really. So they play Big Teferi. Tuck our guy. We untap. Draw Kaya's Guile. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw. They play Polluted Delta. They crack Polluted Delta. They get a Hallowed Fountain. Okay. Pass to their end step. I don't know if they're playing, like, Snapcasters or anything. But let's exile their grave and make a 1/1. They're acting as though they have Drown in the lock. So they can just kill the token. We untap. Draw Silent Clearing. Play it. Go to combat. Attack Teferi for 1. Teferi goes to 1. They untap. They play Glacial Fortress. They're almost a hard casting their Archon. Cycle Silent Clearing. We draw Ashen Rider. Let Teferi resolve. Make a 1/1 and gain 4. Hopefully we can attack and kill Teferi or force our opponent to do something about this. Okay, opponent does have a counterspell. So now if we can draw a discard outlet, we can play Ashen Rider. That is not a discard outlet. Go to combat. Attack Teferi. I'm going to hold on to this swamp just in case they do play an Archon. Opponent Archmage's Charm to draw cards. They play Flooded Strand. They crack it. Yeah, I think this was a case of me grabbing the wrong Reanimator target. Our opponent's deck is infinitely better into the late game than us. Go to combat. Opponent kills the Spirit. Pass the turn. They play a land. They uptick. Yeah, they can just play Control. They're drawing more cards than us, which means they're going to have more answers than we could possibly have threats. And right now we're on the hard cast Ashen Rider plan, which is not really a great plan. They play Little Teferi. So, like, I would have to draw and resolve Serra Emissary, naming Planeswalker. Oh, they're not going to play Archon, because then I would just discard Ashen Rider and reanimate it. I guess I could still, if they counter it, as long as it's not... Is there any counterspell that's played that exiles? I always jump to Dissipate, but nobody plays Dissipate. We untap. We draw Terastodon. I was kind of hoping that'd be a land. Opponent is drawing every land in their deck somehow. They pass. We untap. We draw a Thoughtseize. So Thoughtseize myself. My opponent having 6 cards in hand, it's not like I could do anything. Ditch Terastodon. Opponent knows the rest of my hand now. Persist Terastodon. They probably have redundant copies of their Planeswalkers. They counter that. Persist Terastodon. They counter that. Pass the turn. I mean, this is what we expected. My opponent's had uncontested Planeswalkers for like 6 turns. They play a land. They draw. They uptick. Kind of want to try playing a Gifts Reanimator deck, because I think it would be really strong. Although, by doing that little persist stunt, I made it okay for my opponent to cast Archon. Yeah. We can see what we draw, but unfortunately I don't think there's anything we can do. Alright. Well, we tried. Alright, I'll see you guys in round 4. Alrighty, welcome back to round 4, everybody. And this hand is not keepable. There's not enough going on. I can work with this. You know, keeping 3 lands versus 2 doesn't really make a huge difference, I think. So I'm going to put back a Swamp. Play Godless Shrine tapped. Pass the turn. I'm going to play a Scalding Tarn. They crack Scalding Tarn, and they get a Steam Vents untapped. Cycling a Street Wraith. I'm playing the Chef. Getting a Cookbook. We untap. Draw Bone Shards. Play a Swamp. Let's go ahead and Unmarked Grave. And, yeah, I think Archon of Cruelty is still the way to go. Not 100% on this. I'm not super familiar with my opponent's deck. I've not seen a... I guess it is Grixis, but I've not really seen the Grixis food deck yet, so... I don't know if this is a case if you've seen one, you've seen them all, but... I guess if my opponent could make 2 foods this turn, I would have to hope to draw land and Like Bone Shards the Chef. I bet that's pretty good. Mox Amber and a 0 mana, 2-color creature. Yep. And they play a land. They probably have Metallic Rebuke. They fetch Emery, mill themselves, and they hit us for 3 and pass. We untap, draw Concealed Courtyard. So, Bone Shards, killing the Chef, discarding the Emissary. And let's persist the Archon. Hope they don't have Metallic Rebuke. They're bobbling us. Alright, we get a discard, we make them sack. They discard Oxida Daredevil, which makes sense. Pass the turn. They only have 2 cards in hand, but they can cycle one of them off of the Underworld Cookbook to pick back up Oval Chase Daredevil. I keep saying Oxida, I mean Oval Chase. Opponent plays Bobble, picks up the Daredevil, and passes. We untap, draw Liliana, go to combat, attack for 5, make our opponent lose some life. They crack Bobble, they ditch the Daredevil, get a food, pick it back up again, and then ditch the Daredevil, question mark. Okay, we get a Profane Tutor. Opponent goes down to 3. So play a Swamp, play Priest of Fell Rites, and we're going to suspend a Profane Tutor. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play Urza's Saga, so they can gain some life off of the food. They ditch Oval Chase, make another food, then play Urza. So they have enough to spin the wheel once. Okay. Opponent can cast another Urza, which does give them a token, if they want to play it. They do. So they get another Construct, but they just die to Archon attacking. We draw Persist, go to combat. Attack with the Archon, they lose 3 life, they're at 3. Alright, we did it. Okay, so versus our opponent, we definitely want Stony Silence. We may want Soul Guide Lantern here, maybe Kaya's Guile. I could bring in Vindicate, but it seems like it's going to be a very overcosted and inefficient answer to most of the stuff my opponent's playing. So, let's figure out what 4 cards we can cut. I think Grave Titan is not going to win the game fast enough versus our opponent. I think as good as Archon of Cruelty is, we probably don't need to absolutely max out on it. Liliana seems a little bit slow. The Edict effect seems quite bad. I don't want to cut it completely, though. And then, I guess I'll cut a Profane Tutor, and we'll try it like that. Well, we have Bone Shards, we have 3 Reanimator targets, but we have no Reanimation spells. This hand has no lands. And this hand does everything we want it to, so we're going to keep this one. We're going to put back Unmarked Grave, and I think Bone Shards. So hopefully our opponent does not have hand hate. Alright, they start with Underworld Cookbook. Sure. We draw Kaya's Guile, play Concealed Courtyard, pass the turn. Opponent did not make a food on our end step. They play a Spire Bluff Canal. They make a food, ditching a Steam Vents. Alright, we untap, draw Marsh Flats, play Marsh Flats, crack Marsh Flats, get a Swamp, and let's go ahead and Unmarked Grave. They might have a Metallic Rebuke here, that would not surprise me. Okay, let's get probably Archon still. I think that's still our best reanimation target. Pass the turn. Depending on how my opponent plays, I may Collective Brutality first, or we might have to set up for like a Kaya's Guile, if they play like an Emery or something like that. They crack Bauble immediately, which tells me they are looking for something. We draw Bone Shards. So do we go for it? If we go for it and get punished, we're really going to get punished. Let's Duress. Maybe we can get our opponent to feel complacent. Aha! They had it! We will not pay for Metallic Rebuke. Pass the turn. Opponent cracks Scalding Tarn, gets a Steam Vents tapped. They play an Urza's Saga. They play Emery. They mill a bunch. There's an Oval Chase Daredevil. So we untap. We draw Godless Shrine. Alright, I don't think they'd be playing a Spell Pierce, but now that I say that out loud, I'm paranoid, so let's go ahead and persist Archon of Cruelty. Alright, enters the battlefield, we make them discard. They're going to Echoing Truth. That's fine. They discard their last card and have to sack Emery. They make a food by pitching an island, picking up Oval Chase Daredevil, and then they sack Emery and discard Oval Chase Daredevil. We draw Inquisition. Pass the turn. We have a discard outlet, we have an Edict. So even if my opponent starts making gigantic Urza Saga tokens, we should be fine. I'm not sure what they paid life for. I think they played a Steam Vents untapped. Oh, they cycled Street Wraith is what it was. Okay. They sack Bauble to look at our top deck. So they're holding Oval Chase Daredevil, which means Inquisition doesn't do anything. I mean, it doesn't make them discard Oval Chase, but... We draw Priest of Fell Rites, so let's Inquisition, see what their new card is. A land. Play Priest of Fell Rites. Pass the turn. Opponent can make an Urza Saga token. Yep, it's a 4/4. They discard Oval Chase, make a food, pick it back up. They untap. They make another token on their upkeep. So they're going to go get a 1-drop. It's probably Pithing Needle for Priest, if I had to guess. Soul Guide Lantern. Okay, that does stop us from reanimating. They're going to get rid of Persist. Opponent ditches Oval Chase, picks it back up, then plays a Thought Monitor. Thought Monitor does make things slightly more complicated, because we can't just Edict. Okay, make another food. So they're going to hit us for 11. I did not think about Urza Saga completing. So we untap. We draw a Silent Clearing. Yeah, I guess we do this now. We're really in trouble after this, to be completely honest. Play Silent Clearing. They're going to crack Soul Guide Lantern, because it doesn't cost any mana to activate. Yep. So we lose our grave. Make them sack. Make a 1/1 with flying. We're doing this now to play around a counterspell. So this gives us a chump block, and then we're going to have to do some cycling of lands, but I don't know what we're going to draw. And opponent has an Echoing Truth, so we're going to game 3. Yeah, that Soul Guide Lantern really got us. I guess I could go for, like, the Kaldra plan, so we don't just fold to Grave Hate, but we are playing Stony Silence, which is not unreasonable for us to cast. I think we stick with what we've got. I would like to play first. This hand seems good-ish. We have an Unmarked Grave. We have 8 2-mana Reanimate spells, so hopefully we can draw one of them. Play Concealed Courtyard. Lead on an Inquisition. Opponent has Mox, Amber, Bauble, Aether Grid. Take Mox. Pass the turn. I suspect opponent's going to lead on Saga. They play a Bauble, they play Saga. They play a Bauble, they drew a Bauble and play it. Not sure why they left the 2 Baubles here, other than maybe to stop me from having the best hand hate. Okay, we drew Persist, so Concealed Courtyard, Unmarked Grave. Opponent Baubles us. I think I'm going to get Ashen Rider. Pass the turn. I want to be able to exile their land. Next turn we have Thoughtseize into Persist. So opponent draws 2 extra cards. Urza Saga ticks up to 2. They play another Urza Saga. We untap. Draw Prismatic Vista. So play not Castle Lochthwain. That was a mistake, but should have played Prismatic Vista. Okay. Exile a Saga. Pass the turn. Saga ticks up to 2. They play a Spirebluff Canal. We untap. Draw Marsh Flats. Thoughtseize you. They have Metallic Rebuke, Emery, and Girapur Aether Grid. I mean, Rebuke's annoying. I think Emery is probably more dangerous. Play Prismatic Vista. Go to combat. And they are holding a Saga, so these are the 5 cards they have. Go to combat. Attack for 4. Thus commences the beatdown. Okay. Urza's Saga ticks up to 3. I'm actually going to go ahead and pick up a Swamp. Just in case they, like, Pithing Needle my Prismatic Vista for some reason. They get Soul Guide Lantern. They're going to exile Persist. They play Spire Bluff. Then they play Girapur Aether Grid. Let's exile their grave and make a flyer. They get an Aether Grid. We untap. Draw Silent Clearing. Go to combat. Attack for 5. Take them to 11. Play Marsh Flats. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw. Cycle a Street Wraith. They go to 9, which does change the clock. They play their 4th Bauble. They play an Urza Saga. So they can ping the Spirit with Aether Grid. Let's go ahead and activate Lochthwain, untap, crack Marsh Flats, get a Swamp. We draw Collective Brutality. Well, we know they have Metallic Rebuke, so play Silent Clearing, go to combat, attack for 5. They ping the 1/1. We hit them for 4, take them to 5. 2 modes, Duress, Drain, change the clock back into our favor. They get Metallic Rebuke, but we can pay for it. Take Galvanic Blast. That's good. Galvanic Blast can actually kill Ashen Rider. If they get Metalcraft. So, I mean, they could... they would be able to play a land. So they would have been able to play a land, make a token, and then Galvanic Blast to kill Ashen Rider. Oops! That's a punt. Put it up on the board. Opponent tap their Urza Saga for mana, then let the triggered ability go off. Yep. They sack Soul Guide Lantern to draw. That means no more Metalcraft. They're desperate to find an Echoing Truth. They play a Scalding Tarn, which is not the island we knew about. Untap. We draw Bone Shards. Go to combat. Hit them for 4. And game. Nice. Alright, well, we're 3-1. I'll see you guys in round 5. Hopefully we can get the 4-1. Alright, we have a Thoughtseize, we have an Unmarked Grave, we have 4 lands, and one of them we can cycle. We are against a Lurrus deck, so I'm actually really tempted to keep this. We just need to draw any of our reanimation targets and the reanimation spell. If we don't get Thoughtseized, we only have to draw a reanimation spell. Opponent mulligans to 6. We're against Doomwake. Ragavan. We draw Ashen Rider. Whoops, I need to play a land. Herp derp. Kill Ragavan. Pass the turn. Now if we Unmarked Grave, I think we Unmarked Grave for Unburial Rites. So play a Plains. Unmarked Grave. Go and get Burial Rites. Pass the turn. We are going to get hit by Ragavan. When it goes to combat, hits us for 2, they get a treasure. They exile Marsh Flats. And they play a Tarmogoyf. We draw Inquisition. So, Thoughtseize. The legendary Lurrus Ragavan Jund. I think we take Scourge and we Inquisition away Bolt. Play Castle Lochthwain. Inquisition. They don't have a fetch land, so Renin 6 is actually kind of bad. There's no instance in the grave, so if I take Bolt, they... Actually, if I take Bolt, Tarmogoyf gets bigger, and then they can still play another Tarmogoyf. I'm going to take Tarmogoyf. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They go to combat. Attack for 4. They bolt our face. They hit Unmarked Grave. They play a Godless Shrine. Then they cast Unmarked Grave. They're going to go put something in their grave. It's a Bloodstained Mire. They want Tarmogoyf to be bigger. We untap and draw Priest of Fell Rites. Play Silent Clearing. Reanimate Ashen Rider. Exile the Goyf. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw. And they pass. We untap. We draw Bone Shards. Bone Shards Ragavan. Ditching Godless Shrine. Go to combat. Attack for 5. Hit them to 11. Play the Priest. Pass the turn. We untap. We draw Godless Shrine. Go to combat. Attack for 7. Hit them to 4. Play Godless Shrine. And pass the turn. Opponent scoops. Okay. So versus my opponent's deck, I definitely want the Stoneforge Mystic package. So it's 6 cards in. I may want the Soul Guide Lantern because they are playing Tarmogoyf, but I think Kaya's Guile is actually what we want. And I think versus this opponent, let me double check what they're playing for Grave Hate. Let's see. Ragavan Jund. Okay, that version does not play Grave Hate. Nile Spellbomb. Soul Guide Lantern. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and cut, I think, Terastodon, an Archon of Cruelty, a Profane Tutor, a couple of Persists, a couple of Unmarked Graves, and let's go down to 1 Unmarked Grave. Let's try like this. I don't really want to use the grave if we can avoid it, but like we're gonna need to keep some amount of the reanimation stuff in the deck. We can't do a true transformative sideboard, but alright. We'll try it. Opponent did keep a risky hand, so that's probably why we beat them. Yeah, I don't want a mulligan. We'll keep this. Opponent starts Bloodstained Mire, cracks it. For Blood Crypt. Plays Ragavan. We untap. We draw Archon of Cruelty. So play a Swamp. Inquisition. Opponent has Push, Death Shadow, Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, Renin 6. I think I take Renin 6 from my opponent. The other cards kind of hurt, but there's not a lot we can do about it. Opponent attacks us for 2. We go to 18, they make a treasure, and they exile a Swamp, so they whiff. They shock Breeding Pool. They put Lurrus into their hand. We untap. We draw Bone Shards. So even if they have a land, and they play Lurrus, they can't play Renin 6 this turn. And I kind of want to save Bone Shards for Lurrus. I think we suspend Profane Tutor. I could play out the Priest. That would force them to cast Removal, but they have Fatal Push or Lightning Bolt, and they can still play Lurrus if they have a land. Although that does make it trickier for them. The longer I go without suspending Profane Tutor, the worse it gets, though. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This makes Persist an amazing top deck. We did take a lot of them out of our deck, unfortunately. Opponent will get a treasure because we... they exile Grave Titan. Opponent's probably wishing they really could play that. They play Verdant, so they did draw land. They Thoughtseize us, so there goes Bone Shards. I'm 99% sure Bone Shards is the correct pick here. They could take the Priest, but they're holding Removal. There's nothing that we could really tutor for with Unmarked Grave at the moment. I guess I could go put Unburial Rites in the grave. Yeah, they take Bone Shards. Opponent cracks Verdant Catacombs. They get a Watery Grave, they go to 10. They play Death Shadow, so they're still holding Lightning Bolt and Push. We draw Lily. Play Silent Clearing. So I think we play Lily and Uptick. My opponent's probably going to ditch Fatal Push. They'll keep the Lightning Bolt because they want the direct damage. But Profane Tutor is coming off Suspend, and Profane Tutor can go and get Persist. Okay, opponent discards Fatal Push. I haven't commented on it yet, but they're playing the Yargle Fatal Push, which I approve. I think they have to attack and kill Lily, or use Bolt to kill Lily. I don't think they can kill us, unless they Bolt themselves and drew Teamer Battle Rage, which I'm not even sure if they still play or not. I imagine they do, because it's really good with Scourge and it's really good with Death Shadow. Because if they don't kill Lily, we're just going to wipe their board, basically. I mean, they could keep Lurrus if they played Lurrus this turn. So they just attack us, exiling a Godless Shrine. They let us keep the Lily. So they can play Lurrus, and then they can play Renin 6, but then they can't Lightning Bolt. They might Lightning Bolt Lily right now, just to stop her from Edicting. Okay, they play Lurrus, and they play Renin 6. They pick up a land, play the land, fetch, shock, Bolt. Okay. I forgot they hadn't played a land this turn. That's actually pretty good. So, we really only can go get the reanimation spell. We don't have too much else going on. So then we draw Marsh Flats. Now I could Unmarked Grave if I thought a different creature would be better. So if I went and got Sarah's Emissary and then named Creature, I don't actually think my opponent can beat that. Not unless they have a Terminate. I think that's actually safer than Archon of Cruelty. So crack Marsh Flats, get a Swamp, Unmarked Grave, go get Sarah's Emissary. Unfortunately, it will take more than one swing to kill our opponent. Persist, name Creature, ditch the Priest, pass the turn. Opponent discarded a Tarmogoyf. So our opponent cannot gain life. They're going to ping us with Renin 6. Then they play a Territorial Kavu and replay Tarmogoyf. We untap. We draw Batterskull. We will not be able to unearth Priest of Fell Rites. Attack our opponent. We will also not really be able to cast Batterskull, so I'm just going to cycle a Silent Clearing, I think. I guess play a Castle. I don't want to get rid of all of my white mana. We'll just pass. Opponent can win if they top deck Lightning Bolt. They ping us to 3. And they always have it! Every time they have it. I'm never not dead to Bolt. If they have untapped red mana and I'm at 3 life, I die to Bolt every single time. It is never not the truth. Oh my gosh. Alright. I'm going to bring in 1 Persist again, and we're going to drop... I think we're going to go for a 3-3. Well, actually Persist might be better than Priest of Fell Rites. Let's try it like this.
I'm not even, like, actually mad. I'm just, like, I'm amazed, honestly, that happens so frequently. Now, like, had we drawn lands other than the Pain lands, like, we would have been in a lot better shape. I'm going to keep this. We get to lead on an Inquisition. We get to follow up with either a Stoneforge Mystic or a Bone Shards, and then all we got to do is draw Persist and probably win the game. Inquisition. Opponents got Death Shadow, Stubborn Denial, Tarmogoyf, Thoughtseize, Tribal Themes. So, take Thoughtseize from them. Pass the turn. They play a Swamp. Oh, he's got amazing top deck luck. Good job. Oh my god. Yeah, he used up all his bad luck in the first game. So opponent can Tribal Flames to kill Stoneforge is what I'm seeing. We still play Stoneforge. There's no reason not to. We crack Marsh Flats, get a Swamp. Stoneforge. Batterskull is way more castable, but also much more fragile, especially against our opponent's deck. I think we just have to get Caldra. We might end up, like, discarding it later if we have to, like, max value a Collective Brutality or something. But this means my opponent has to fetch, like, a Steam Vents or a Stomping Ground for Tribal Flames. Okay. It also means they're not playing Tarmogoyf for a turn. We drew another Stoneforge, which is pretty good. So it's going to depend on whether or not my opponent drew another removal spell. Thoughtseize, they could take Caldra. Because Caldra, I don't think they have any hope of answering. Where are all these cards coming from? We untap. We draw Bone Shards. So, put Batterskull into play. Living Weapon. My opponent has Death Shadow and Tarmogoyf in hand. Fetch with Prismatic Vista, get another basic Swamp. Kill Tarmogoyf, discarding Archon. Pass the turn. So we know our opponent's hand. Attacking them is a little bit awkward, because Death Shadow would only get bigger. They put Lurrus into their hand. We untap. We draw Marsh Flats. So play Marsh Flats. Go to combat. We do have to attack here, I'm fairly certain. Okay. Pass the turn. This does turn on Stubborn Denial. Opponent plays a Death Shadow. Then plays a Territorial Kavu. Crack Marsh Flats. Get a Godless Shrine. Tapped. Untap. We draw Castle Lochthwain. Play it. Go to combat. Attack for 4. Opponent blocks. We gain the life. Pick up Batterskull. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. If we draw one more land, we can cast Grave Titan, which is huge. They go to combat. They attack for 11. They're going to discard and draw. Okay. We're going to take 11. Opponent ditches a Stubborn Denial. We go to 12. They can play Lurrus if they drew a black land. They play Wooded Foothills, but they're not playing Lurrus. So put Batterskull into play. Untap. We draw Bone Shards. Go to combat. Attack for 4. Opponent goes down to 2. If they fetch up a black land tapped, they can play Lurrus, and then if they have an untapped land that doesn't cost them life, they can replay Tarmogoyf. The alternative is like, oh, I needed to attack with Stoneforge. Damn it. Okay. Well, pass the turn. We're saving Bone Shards. When it cracks Wooded Foothills, goes to 1. Yeah, we needed to attack with Stoneforge. I don't know why I didn't see that. I may have just thrown this match. You know, like you do. But the way I've currently got it, if they play Lurrus this turn, without a basic land, it is unlikely they can play a Tarmogoyf. And even if they can, if they attack, I think they lose. The only thing that kills us is going to be like a Temur Battle Rage. Opponent is deep in the tank. Opponent goes to combat. Attacks for 12. Block. We gain 4. Opponent plays Lurrus. So, on their end step, activate Stoneforge, maintaining priority, then pick up Batterskull. And we're doing this in case they have a Lightning Bolt to kill Stoneforge. Bone Daddy taught me that one. The Diabolic Tutor himself. We untap. We draw Kaya's Guile. Okay. So, Bone Shards, discarding a card. Discarding Grave Titan. Go to combat. And we got there. We got the 4-1. Good match, Doomwake. Alright, let's open up our treasure chest, shall we? Seems like it's been forever, mainly because I haven't been playing Constructed. But treasure chest number 1! 5 play points, an Old Border Archmage's Charm. There's something. The Old Border promo is like 20 tickets? Nice. Open another treasure chest. We got 35 play points and a Vizardrix. Treasure chest number 3, 10 play points and a Rakdos Pit Dragon. Treasure chest number 4, 5 play points, a Jadzi Oracle of Arcavios, full or extended art, and a Greater Harvester. And final treasure chest, 5 play points, a Blinking Spirit, and Vesuva. It's the Time Spiral Vesuva, which is worth a quarter. Overall, I think this is a pretty good deck. I think we dodged a few of the more troubling matchups, but I think Control might be quite difficult for us to beat. I think it's interesting to me to see that with the printing of Persist, there is now 2 distinct Reanimator decks you can play in Modern. I'm not sure which one is objectively better, if there is, but you can still play like the Gifts Ungiven, Unburial Rites, controlling Reanimate Iona, Reanimate Elish Norn, and you can still reanimate the threats that are in this deck too. Archon of Cruelty, Sarah's Emissary, Ashen Rider, Terastodon, those are nothing to sneeze at. But with Persist being a 2-mana reanimate spell that can't hit legendary creatures, no longer are the best reanimator targets in Modern, solved. There's an incomparable choice between the two. And by incomparable, I mean one is not obviously better than the other. It might get that way in the future, but right now it is not. And that is the kind of card I want printed in Modern Horizons style sets. I want cards that divide deck archetypes into 2 different decks. So you want to play a Reanimator deck, you can play the controlling one now, or you can play the one that tries to combo, and just make a huge fat creature on turn 2. That is the kind of card I want printed into Modern Horizons, and I'm really happy to see that it made it itself into a deck, and it's playable, and it's good. I kind of wish there were more, and maybe there is, I haven't looked yet. Maybe there's other large creatures that are worth reanimating with Persist. Maybe, I think Sarah's Emissary and Archon of Cruelty, and Ashen Rider, Terastodon, even, Grave Titan being reanimator target number 5 / possibly castable it might be stretching it a little bit. And I'm not sure that there's another target that you could play that's better than any one of those, but there might be. And it might be a Terastodon style situation where it's in a color that I just didn't consider or something like that. Sarah's Emissary is interesting because it really does a Blazing Archon impression. We named creature, and we would have beaten our opponent if they didn't top deck that Lightning Bolt. It's a moat. It's a you can just name sorcery, and then all of a sudden your opponent can't thought seize you or burn you out, and you should be winning anyway because you have a 6/6 or a 7/7 that's attacking and it's a flyer. But you can name instant, and you can stop people from targeting you with things like Gifts Ungiven if you were in the mirror match as an example. There's a lot of interesting things, and I'm really happy that they printed this card because it's a really cool top-end white card. The problem that I have with this is it's not generally going to be played in a white deck. It's going to be played in a Reanimator deck. And this deck is basically a black deck. There's very, very few white cards in the deck, and the only reason that there are basically for the sideboard package, because Priest of Fell Rites, as far as a reanimation spell goes, is a little bit it's a little bit slow and a little bit fragile. I think it's worth playing because it is probably the best reanimation spell behind Persist, especially for a deck like this. I'm not even sure there's a 3-mana reanimate spell that you could get something unconditionally with. I think they're all at 4, except maybe Footsteps of the Goryo, but that's only temporary, and you end up sacking the creature at the end. Which is good if you're playing something like Ashen Rider, but not good if you're playing things like Archon of Cruelty and whatnot. So I think Priest of Fell Rites is a necessity if you're going to be playing a Reanimator deck in this style. But yeah, I don't think I have any other suggestions, really. You could play with the numbers a little bit. Profane Tutor felt good. I'm not sure how to sideboard with this deck, and I still really am not sure how to sideboard with this deck post-playing with it. I was probably making some questionable decisions, but the fact that we still 4-1'd, and I mean, we only got moderately lucky a couple of times. We got really unlucky a couple of times, too, so it kind of balanced out. I think I played this well enough. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. I'll try and play more constructed. There's a few more decks like this one I want to play that are somewhat viable, but not top tier. They might dunk on Ragavan, they might not. So stay tuned if you want to see him. Hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you did, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined. And remember, you can follow me on Twitch. Same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays late in the evening, usually, though not always. But they're usually on Wednesdays. I'm going to try and get another follow-up stream this week if I can, but no promises. Yeah, you're all wonderful human beings. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye! Hey, just wanted to give a shout out to my patrons for the month of July. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate your support. And if you want to have your guys' names show up in this list, there's a link to my Patreon in the description down below. Thank you all so much.